what they and their organizations actually do, because you can't tell from the little descriptions in their bios, which are of course in the book, and what we all do here is really quite innovative and unusual. So I thought it was important that they describe what they're involved with. And as with the other sessions, we'll speak for a brief time. We'll limit people to 5 minutes, and I'll try to warn you politely when the 5 minutes is finished. We'll then have a chance for a little dialogue, and I have some questions which I'll ask. But one small change from the pattern of the previous panels, I'd like to spend most of the time this afternoon giving the dialogue with you, the audience, as well as with us. So we'll spend a little less time on the internal questions up here and more time to give you a chance to ask questions. Because I think in the other sessions, the questions that have been asked from the floor have been really quite illuminating and interesting, and we want to reflect your concerns. Let me very, very briefly introduce the panel members, and then I'll ask them each to speak, I guess, from this end to that end. Dr. Tamadir Al-Rama is Vice Minister of Labor and Social Development. She is a medic by background and a university professor, as well as now a minister in the government. Joe Burgess is Vice President of Education for the Flatiron School, which he will describe for us, which teaches passionate adults how to be software engineers, data scientists, designers, and et cetera. Sriram Ramakrishna is a professor at the National University of Singapore. He chairs the Circular Economy Task Force there and has 2 decades of leadership experience at NUS, which is one of the top 25 universities in the world. And I've called Sriram, who I've known for a number of years, the most innovative person in the most innovative country. So this is quite a talent. And finally, Matt Siegelman is the CEO of Burning Glass Technologies, a leading labor market and analytics firm, and he will explain exactly what that is and how it works. So with that brief introduction, let me start with you.
Thank you very much. Does it work? It works? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As'adallah masa'akum jami'an. If you allow me, my colleagues, I will start my talk in Arabic and then maybe the dialogue will be in English. تعتبر العلاقة بين المهارات وسوق العمل علاقة متلازمة، فأي تغيير يحدث في أحدهما فإنه سيؤثر على الآخر. ومن هذا المنظور وباستحضار التغيرات التي تحدث في الاقتصاد العالمي والتأثير الواضح من ناحية الوظائف والكفاءات والمهارات المرتبطة بها، فإن طبيعة الممارسات والآليات المتبعة في سوق العمل ستكون مختلفة وبشكل كبير في المستقبل. إن المرحلة القادمة بدأت تتغير خصائصها ومحتوياتها لتصبح أكثر ديناميكية، بالإضافة لتسارع التكنولوجي والتنوع الثقافي المتزايد. وبحسب ما ذكره تقرير وظائف المستقبل لمؤتمر دافوس في عام 2018، إن محولات القوى العاملة بدأت في التصاعد السريع، وهذه تعتبر نافذة للإدارات الفاعلة. وينبغي على الحكومات أن تضع خطط فاعلة وتنفذها برؤية جديدة لسوق العمل العالمي. ومن المهم هنا أن نشير إلى أن تأخر كثير من الدول في الاستعداد لمتغيرات سوق العمل بحسب ما ذكره تقرير دافوس يعطي فرصة لمن يريد التحرك أولاً والتأثير في هذه المتغيرات. ومن أجل تحقيق ذلك فإن بناء نظام خارجي محفز إيكو سيستم يعتمد في تنفيذه على الابتكارات، وسيمنح أولوية لهذه الدول إن لم تكن مؤثرة بأن تكون على الأقل الاحتمالات من أولى الدول المتحركة. ومن أهم المفاهيم والاتجاهات الأساسية التي ستغير في نوعية المهارات وتحدد طبيعة العمل المستقبلية صناعة القيمة المعرفية، مستوى الكفاءات، المهن الجديدة والتي ستبدأ في الظهور من خلال عملية الابتكارات في مجالات البيانات الضخمة والتحليلات والموظف الآلي والطابعات ثلاثية الأبعاد وعلم الأحياء الاصطناعي وتقنية النانو وغيرها. النظر للعمل مع الموظف بعقلية ومهارات رائد الأعمال، زيادة الطلب على الأشخاص الذين لديهم فهم لنظام الابتكار الخارجي، التقنية التي ستستخدمها الأجيال القادمة، أدواتها، الاستراتيجيات والآليات التجارية والتابعة لقطاع الأعمال التي ستحدد معالم الاقتصاد العالمي. مجتمع حيوي، اقتصاد مزدهر، ووطن طموح، 3 محاور بنيت عليها رؤية المملكة 2030 من أجل تعزيز ركائز القوة لدي المملكة: العمق العربي والإسلامي، القوة الاستثمارية الرائدة، محور ربط القارات الثلاث. أشار قائد الرؤية سمو ولي العهد في كلمة له إلى تعزيز مبادئ الرعاية الاجتماعية وتطويرها لبناء مجتمع قوي ومنتج من خلال تعزيز دور الأسرة وقيامها بمسؤولياتها، وتوفير التعليم القادر على بناء الشخصية وإرساء منظومة اجتماعية وصحية ممكنة. فالفرص التي تكمن في الرؤية وفيرة، وأهم محورين لهما هما مواردنا البشرية والطبيعية. إن مستقبل العمل يتطلب مهارات فريدة ومتنوعة من أجل تحقيق نهضة طموحة للوطن وبناء مستقبل ناجح وحيوي، ومن هنا تأتي رؤية المملكة 2030 محركاً تنموياً مواكباً للتغيرات وتطوير المهارات المرتبطة بها. ومن خلال برنامج التحول الوطني تسعى وزارة العمل والتنمية الاجتماعية إلى تحقيق 12 هدف كمنظومة متكاملة من أجل الارتقاء بمستوى الخدمات المقدمة للمستفيدين وصولاً إلى مستقبل زاهر وتنمية مستدامة. ومنها نطمح في 2030 إلى تعزيز شخصية المستفيد من خلال الخدمات الاجتماعية القادرة على العمل، ليكون معتمداً على ذاته في كسب عيشه مستغنياً عن الإعانات المالية، وذلك من خلال تمكينه من الاندماج في سوق العمل. وبحلول 2020 سيصل عدد المستفيدين المستغنين عن الإعانات المالية إلى 72,000 مستفيد. رفع مستوى المساهمة في رفع مستوى المساهمة الاقتصادية المستدامة للتطوع، وتكثيف الفرص التطوعية ذات الجودة لكافة الراغبين بها في أنحاء المملكة وإثراء خبراتهم بحلول 2030، ورفع القيمة الاقتصادية للفرد المتطوع من 0.6 ريال إلى 15 ريال للساعة. زيادة تركيز الشراكات المحلية على المسؤوليات الاجتماعية وتنوع أنشطتها، ورفع مستوى مساهمتها من خلال تقديم خدمات مجتمعية تنموية لتحسين النظرة العامة لأثر قطاع الأعمال في المجتمع. زيادة المساهمة الاقتصادية المستدامة للقطاع الغير ربحي في الناتج المحلي من 0.3% إلى 0.6%، ونسبة العاملين من 0.13% إلى 0.32%. ونعمل على إنشاء مركز وطني لتنمية القطاع الغير ربحي لتحقيق التطوير واستقلال القطاع والمساهمة في تعزيز تغطية الاحتياجات التنموية في المملكة العربية السعودية. رفع العائد الاجتماعي التنموي من مبادرات وخدمات منظمات القطاع الغير ربحي وزيادة فاعليتها وتعزيز دورها في تقديم وتنفيذ الحلول الابتكارية لمواجهة التحديات والاحتياجات التنموية، وإيجاد فرص محفزة للاستثمار الاجتماعي. وبحلول عام 2020 فإننا نهدف إلى رفع نسبة الإنفاق التنموي من إجمالي القطاع الغير ربحي من 21% إلى 51%. تطوير منظومة متكاملة من التشريعات والخدمات لتمكين الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة وإتاحة كافة الفرص أمامهم دون تمييز ليكونوا عناصر فاعلة ومعطاءة ومدمجة في المجتمع، وذلك من خلال رفع نسبة العاملين من الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة من 7.7% لتصل إلى 12% بحلول 2020، وتحقيق أثر إيجابي ملحوظ في زيادة دمج الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة في سوق العمل. ولذلك أنشأنا هيئة لرعاية الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، وقريباً سنطلق الاستراتيجية الوطنية للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، والمملكة عضواً في اتفاقية حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة وبروتوكولها الاختياري في الأمم المتحدة. ولقناعتنا أن عمل المرأة حق لها وضرورة تفرضها ظروف الحياة وليس رفاهية أو أمر ثانوي، فقد حدد ضمن أهداف برنامج التحول الوطني 2020 هدفاً لرفع معدل مشاركة المرأة في سوق العمل من 17% إلى 25%، وتمكينها وتسهيل ممارسة الأعمال وتطوير قطاع التجزئة. أخيراً وامتداد لرؤية مملكتنا وبالنظر إلى برنامج منظومة الحماية الاجتماعية، فإن المملكة تسعى لتطوير وتوفير منصة وطنية موحدة شاملة لكافة وسائل الدعم، والتي سيوجد من خلالها أنظمة وسياسات وبرامج مساعدة للفئات الضمانية تعينهم على مواجهة الأزمات والصدمات الاقتصادية، وتساهم في إيجاد فرص عمل مناسبة لهم. وحرصاً على أهمية الاستثمار في الرأس المال البشري، وكذلك العمل من خلال هذه الأنظمة والسياسات على عناية وحماية المواطنين المسنين. وشكراً لكم.
Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon. Let me begin by expressing my thanks to Philip Albeck, Chairman of the session, and the Ministry of Education, KSA, for inviting me here, sharing our experiences in Singapore, both personally as well as the university. Before I give my 5-minute speech, I know Philip is a big taskmaster. He would not want me to extend. I just want to ask one question. How many of you familiar with Singapore? Oh, excellent. Probably I don't have to say anything. So I would make sure I would give a bullet points so that you are reminded about Singapore and the National University of Singapore within the 5 minutes. Singapore, basically a country of 5 million people. It's an island nation. Last 50 years, it progressed from a fishing village to a globally dynamic, most advanced and a rich country. Singapore has about 50,000 researchers and spends more than $3 billion per annum, is one of the most research-intensive and innovation-intensive country on the planet. I work at the National University of Singapore, which is a public university and has 40,000 students. With the 40,000 students as a public university, we feel very proud. It is ranked among the top 15 universities in the world consistently for the last 5 years. NUS, or National University of Singapore, value add to the society. I say this because I've been following the last 2 days of communications, especially from the ministers. There is several questions. I try to address them through my bullet points. The value add of NUS to the society is primarily a magnet for the foreign direct investment to Singapore. Also, we would like to be a world-renowned university in Singapore for overseas-going Singaporeans. It is also a home for a Singaporean elite and experts. So what are the things that we have done that made us so distinguishing over the last 20 years? I would put them in terms of 3 I's. First I is integrative or multidisciplinary approach towards research and education. Second one is about internationalization and globalization, where we have excelled substantially in reaching out to a number of partners worldwide. Third tenet, or third I, is we have been promoting the culture of innovation and entrepreneurship among our faculty members and students for the last 20 years. These 3 I's are backed up by 3 important things, that is autonomy to the universities. I was one of the task force member for our Ministry of Education about 20 years ago, where we started giving autonomy to the Singapore universities. Second important aspect is substantial investments, especially in terms of the per capita investments in the higher education and research. Third aspect is we have paid a lot of attention in growing the number of graduate researchers and postdoctoral scientists who form the backbone of research-intensive university in Singapore. So with these things, we are also aligned ourselves with the global trends. Most important right now is smart manufacturing, or Industry 4.0. And to substantiate, I've been following the media reports in Saudi Arabia. I just came 48 hours ago. There's an interesting article which talks about a debate. Should we measure the absorption of Industry 4.0 in Saudi Arabia? And there was also certain questions in the audience this morning session. Here I would like to highlight Singapore is the first country in the world started what they call Smart Manufacturing Index. It's primarily to look at how various small, medium, as well as large international companies are absorbing and living to the Industry 4.0. So I would really like you to look at that one. And this has been actually emulated by China right now. And Singapore is also the highest robotic density in the world, right behind South Korea. And we are focusing on food, medicine, and digital technologies, which primarily focus on fine tech. My last bullet point, since you know Singapore very well, what is important about Singapore is it changes constantly. If you had visited 5 years ago, please do come back. And you are most welcome to visit a most fantastic human experiment on the planet, and you will not be disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for inviting me. Thank you for allowing a non-academic in this world of academia. I appreciate it. And thanks to the Kingdom for welcoming me. It's been my second time here, and every time, it's better the second time as I'm more familiar with it. It's been fantastic. Flatiron School, we are a young school. We started 7 years ago with the mission to create a global campus of lifelong learners focused on positive impact. We believe we were looking at the world in 2013, 2012, and we kept talking to engineering managers at the time. We were in the world of software engineering, and we heard over and over the skills gap, this gap between what employers needed and what prospective employees knew and had. And so we started the Flatiron School. We teach software engineering, data science, and UX UI design via an immersive 15-week program in person as well as online. And we have campuses all over the United States as well as London. When we were presented with this problem of a skills gap, there's a lot of solutions, but the thing that we kept hearing was that the skills required to be successful in a job, the skills required that employers are looking for, that governments are looking for, that entire economies are looking for, were simply moving faster than a person could learn them on their own. And when we looked into that, we realized the reason why is because education has the ability to move a student through a learning material faster than they can on their own, right? If you could learn everything by yourself, then why would you ever go to school? So you go to school because you can learn faster that way, right? You can learn more, you can learn different things, you can learn better. And so when we're presented with this idea that skills are moving faster than people could learn on their own, than adults could learn on their own, we realized what we need to do is we need to figure out how to bring education into an adult's life. How do we drag education out of finishing when you're 22 with your university and your undergraduate into your adult life in a way that wasn't as expensive and long as a master's or PhD program might be? And so Flatiron School has been doing that. We've partnered, we've been doing it ourselves. Most of our students are career changers. They've had their first career and they're choosing something else. They can do it in 15 weeks. And we've been hyper-focused on ensuring students get jobs. And so that means 97% of our graduates get jobs in their chosen field within 6 months of graduating. And as we talk about this panel, our goal is to shift the system of education away from a one in which we shove as much information as possible in 4 years or 3 years or whatever that your early undergraduate experience is, from a one of that sort of education to a world of just-in-time education, where adults have a fluid interaction with education, with schools. They come in and out, some employer-sponsored, some self-paid, to make sure that education is a lifelong journey. And it's a journey that's supported in a fiscally responsible way. We think it's the future for industry, it's the future for successful economies, to constantly keep up, especially in these high-paced fields such as data science, software engineering, design, and there's many more to come, cybersecurity, right? And so that's kind of how we started, and that's the mission we continue to push on, is thinking, how do we drag that education into an adult's life? Wouldn't a more interesting world be, instead of finishing your degree at 22, going to a short-term education experience for a year, learn the basics of getting a job, get a job, learn if that's actually what you want to do for a year or two, then come back to school, all the way out transitioning back and forth between industry and school. Hopefully it means you graduate with less debt, which in the United States is a massive problem. It's now one of the highest forms of consumer debt is student debt. And also it allows you to keep up with the pace of skills. And I think the pace of skills doesn't slow down, it only gets faster. So as an educational institution and as an educational system, successful economies will be the ones that can figure out how to bring education from beyond just finishing at age 22 and all the way through an adult's life. Thank you.
Thank you. One quick question. How
Yes.
many students are involved?
In Flatiron School?
Yeah.
We've graduated, we've graduated about 2,000 students. We were acquired by WeWork, which is a global co-working and real estate company, back in 2017. So we had graduated about 2,000 students until 2017. We had one campus only teaching software engineering. In 2018, we expanded to 8 new campuses, launched 2 new disciplines, launched both of them online, and so we'll 3 or 4x our student graduates from 2017 to 2018. And so we'll be graduating about 1,000 students a year.
Thank you. Please.
I'm Matt Siegelman. I'm the CEO of Burning Glass. And first, I just want to take a moment to thank His Excellency, the Minister, for the chance to be here, and of course, Dr. Salim and Liz and Phil for the chance to be part of this rich conversation. It's such an exciting time to be in Saudi Arabia. It's been so seldom in the history of the world when a country has brought itself very purposefully to an inflection point, and has seizing an opportunity to really recast its trajectory and rewrite its DNA. And very germane to this conversation, I think it's with the realization that that DNA is skills. It's the skills that make up this workforce and the future workforce of Saudi Arabia, and realizing that the organ for affecting this change is learning. In the world of education, we tend to start out with a very basic operating premise, which is that we build education around students. We put students first. Seems like the right and smart thing to do. At the same time, when we realize that education is a bridge to opportunity, it also makes a lot of sense to start by understanding the landscape of that opportunity, and that's the work that we're lucky to do at Burning Glass. Our work is in mapping, thank you so much. Our work is in mapping the, I thought I was loud enough as is in mapping the landscape of opportunity in order to be able to understand how students can be more successful and how we can create more effective transitions and interchange between learning and work. We do that by understanding the world of work. We collect millions of job postings every day, over 1 billion current and historical job postings. We collect hundreds of millions of people's resumes and profiles and career histories a year. And we translate them back to a common language so that we can understand what's trending, what jobs are in demand, what jobs will be in demand, how jobs are changing, and what are the skills that are affecting those changes and that make students successful. And what we found over the course of all that analysis is that, in fact, the job market is a misnomer. Job market's actually not driven by jobs at all. What we've seen through our data is that the job market is driven by skills. The skills of a job define those jobs. It becomes its DNA. The skills of a job define the dynamism and mark the dynamism of jobs. How are jobs changing? And they mark the diversity of the workforce as well. Now, to this point of change, we've heard a lot of discussion around the speed of the pace of change, and just to put some actual concrete facts around that. There are whole occupations where 40% of the job requirements are different from what they were just a decade ago. It's a profound rate of change. And we're used to assuming that that is a technology change. And indeed, technologies are changing and changing fast. But there's something even more profound going on, and that challenge is challenging the ability for higher education to keep up and to produce graduates who are work ready, and the ability for the economy to have people who are relevant and who can drive the dynamo that will be Saudi Arabia. Here's how. What we've seen is that increasingly, in addition to the force of technology change, increasingly new sets of skills are intersecting jobs that we've all long heard about. The result is what we come to refer to as hybrid jobs, jobs that mix skills, that are asking people to wear different hats that didn't normally get worn on the same head. Just to put a quick fact around that, if you look at top earning quartile occupations, jobs that pay the most, 50% are in occupations where significant percentages of postings value coding skills. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean that 50% of top earning occupations are coding jobs. They're not necessarily tech jobs. These are jobs in finance, they're jobs in life science, they're jobs in marketing. What we're seeing is that these skills have spread to a bunch of different fields. Same is true with data science, where there's a fast growth of demand for data scientists, but it's still a relatively small number of jobs. The much bigger change is the demand for data science skills within marketing jobs, within finance jobs, and the like. When we think about the world of higher education, which has tended to construct itself around silos, this is a significant challenge. And so the work that we do at Burning Glass is we work with higher education and tertiary education institutions and government ministries to identify the programs of study that align to the new economy, help them construct programs that address the skills that graduates will need, help them assess their existing programs to see how the jobs that those programs align students for are changing so that we don't have students who graduate into unemployment or underemployment. And we help universities track emerging technologies and emerging skills so that they can see some of these sorts of things. That's just again put one more fact here on this and how this is so challenging. Imagine for a second that you had a crystal ball and you rewound the clock 5 years ago and you started a program in predictive analytics at a university. Maybe there were one or two universities here which did. There's been since then a threefold growth in demand for data scientists. That in itself is a dramatic growth in a labor market that tends to work in a much more tectonic, a few percent a year pace. But here's the thing. Imagine so you built the right program. The skills within data science jobs, the same times they grew threefold, demand for data visualization skills within data science jobs has grown 21-fold. For big data architecture skills within those jobs has grown 18-fold. So in other words, you would have developed a curriculum that would already be out of date. So how do you keep your finger on the pulse of that, track the economy? Most of all, to Joe's point, how do we reconceive what a university is in the 21st century? When jobs are getting rewritten all the time, the notion of once and done, of going to university and then being finished, no longer applies. Workers need to be able to have an infrastructure to continue to be productive, to increase in their productivity. And that is a much bigger audience, a much bigger market for higher education in the 21st century, which we're proud to work with universities to help tap.
Thank you. I have a few questions for all of you. Start out with Sriram, maybe. What is the National University of Singapore's view about skills training? Now, NUS has been a kind of traditional research-led university, and is it moving in the skills training direction? How do you see your graduates in that respect?
So, to give the perspective, Singapore has 6 universities. One of the universities is National University of Singapore. While we are the best university in Singapore, we have been focusing on introducing critical thinking, broad-based knowledge for our students across all the different courseworks. But recently what we have seen is job market is having a significant changes. There is a forecast, both Singapore and Hong Kong, next 20 years, 30% of the jobs that exist will not exist after 20 to 30 years. So there is enormous concern from the public as well as the government saying, what is NUS doing in terms of responding to future possible scenarios? Within the university, we have previous experience. Some of you who are running the universities, you realize there is always a gap between what is projected, what actually happens in the job market. Sometimes we rush too quickly, try to introduce the programs. When the students graduate, we suddenly realize job market is actually not ready. So we are mindful of this situation. Within the university, we try to respond and provide a lot more skills development component while still keeping the critical thinking and broad-based education, which we believe is a life skills, whereas the technical skills are more necessary for immediate job survival. So the way we have rolled out is we made, for example, industry attachment compulsory for all our students. We also invested in building hands-on laboratories so that they actually have more experience. Third one is we built a multi-year design-centric coursework so that students are highly skilled, at the same time more confident in designing innovative products, and then they're more close to the industry. So to answer your question, fundamentally at the core, we still believe as a top university, we still want to focus on critical thinking and providing this broad knowledge base, which students need for their 40 years of career. At the same time, we would want to give them some skills which gets them the initial startup with the companies. So we're trying to blend both because of the fact that we're a top university, we would want to do both.
Thank you. And now I have a question for Dr. Tamadir, Joe, and Matt. Same question. And you'll have different approaches to it. How do you see the relevance of your organization relating to higher education? Now, you dealt with that a little bit, but maybe say a little bit more, because our audience here are basically all higher education participants. And how do you relate to them? And how should they relate to you?
Should I start?
Please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, understanding the changes in labor market, and of course that's a global thing. It's not only in Saudi Arabia, it's worldwide. The challenges that faces countries, the economy changes, economic disturbance that happens every now and then, makes the regulators of the labor markets, stand up and say, we have to have that relation with universities. Universities should understand what is coming in the future to prepare for that. If you go and look at a lot of the National Transformation Plan, the program and the initiatives in the National Transformation Plan, there's a lot of reskilling. The HRDF is doing a lot of reskilling. TVTC is doing a lot of reskilling. So when we say reskilling, that means that there's a gap between the graduates and the requirements of labor market. Now, what we need to work on, we need to shrink this gap and make sure that students who graduate from labor market are the graduates that graduate from universities and higher education are ready to work next day. The demand of the labor market is being understood by universities. Having graduates that do not find jobs mean that's we have to invest again in making sure that those graduates we can find other jobs for them, or just give them a skill in addition to what they have to make them useful. Now, sometimes the changes are due to economic changes, to investments, but there are things that are coming in the future that are so obvious, and our colleagues here mentioned them: globalization, digitization, automation, artificial intelligence. A lot of technologies are being introduced. If we don't prepare for them now, definitely we will not have the skills to run our own labor markets.
Okay. Gentlemen?
Yeah. When we think of skills and our ability to work with higher education, finance school, higher education a lot of times came from a liberal arts approach of focusing on critical thinking and kind of general theory, where we really come skills first. And so what we can, and what I hope we get a chance to work more with higher ed about, is the opportunity to augment existing successful degrees with the skills that Matt was talking about, that makes your graduates a cut above other graduates. By providing, as Matt mentioned, providing data science and data analyst abilities to marketing majors and MBAs with finance, they are worlds better. They are more productive than anyone else. We've talked with consulting firms who've said that they want to work with us on data science skills training because their consultants are spending all day just cleaning up data and getting it kind of to work instead of actually the work of a consultant, which is deep strategic thinking, right? And our effort with higher education is to allow them to produce those amazing 4-year and 2-year graduates, but have the additional skills needed to be incredibly successful, to be more successful than they would have been otherwise. And in a way that we can do it, which is incredibly economical, it's fast, it's super targeted at exactly what needs to happen to make sure they are a cut above everyone else. And then the one other area we also have been working on is the continuing education departments of higher education, right? These are adults who just need a few extra skills. We come from a world of really impressive outcomes-driven skills education, and we can help augment an existing university's offerings with skills-focused work as well.
So you would be happy to work directly with universities on augmenting their curriculum to make them more effective in this skills area?
Absolutely. I am a product of higher education, just as many of us are here, and I believe in the power of traditional higher education. We just think there needs to be changes to it, which I imagine everyone here agrees on. And the opportunity to work with we got a chance to work with Yale and a few other universities is empowering for us and for our future students. It's exciting.
Sriram?
Yeah, I just want to make one point here. in terms of skills training, if I look at last 20 years, at the National University of Singapore, we introduced lots of new programs in response to the changes in the economy. For example, 20 years ago, there was sudden emphasis on medical technologies and new medicines, growing the pharmaceutical industry. So we started new departments, new schools. Later on, there was an emphasis on logistics, supply chains. We started new programs in that one. But right now, when we say skills development in this new setting, and especially digitalization, it's not about one particular discipline. It is actually cutting across every discipline in the university. For example, artificial intelligence. A traditional radiologist, I'm sure the Excellency would know, there was a time, it's only the radiologist can decide a lot of things. Right, that's not at all. It's a compliment, knowledge-wise. So I believe Excellency has a very good familiarity with radiology. I take that example. So I work with the NUH, National University Hospital, where radiologists will look at the x-rays and then give a particular information to the other clinicians to make the decision. But right now, the AI plays a big role in comparing volumes of these radiographs and other information. It pulls together. The same AI, for example, in manufacturing, we are looking at redefining how the automation is taking place, combining machine learning with traditional manufacturing. You're talking about AI in finance. We are trying to use that to spot those who are basically not following the rules and regulations. So the finance is changing, finance industry is changing, management industries are changing, traditional engineering industries are changing, medicine is changing, even the science, the way it is done. For example, in physics, people do searching lots of images using AI. So what that means is, with a university with 40,000 students and 2,000 faculty members, we are hoping every discipline actually internalizes what it means to be new skills and introduce that in the curricular changes, the way modules are delivered. So this is what we mean by responding to the new need. More than in the past, how we responded is by creating new disciplines and new departments. Right now, it's not the time for new departments. It's a time to revisit the coursework, revisit the way you actually engage the students. That also requires a lot of support for the faculty members because they're also new to many of these new technologies. So I just want to make that point, that skills in 21st century, 2020, we got to look at it differently when we say skills in 2010 or 2000.
And Sriram, what's the secret of NUS being active, taking this on as a major development when so many universities in so many countries go along in a rather traditional way?
Very right. So the NUS is, we have done several things in the past, and we continue to do that. First thing is, many things we do, we benchmark globally and internationally. And in our discussion through the Excellency as well as other senior people in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it's obvious that you also very familiar with these concepts. The only difference I could see is we actually internalize these concepts, we implement them. For example, research grant proposals is all internationally peer-reviewed, and we compete even to secure the funding with the top professors in the world, even though the money is actually Singapore-based. So what it means is NUS, I keep saying NUS, don't imagine that I want to promote or sell NUS to you, but it's the only way to communicate with you. Is so we understand what is needed, and we want to make sure we act on these things. There is a culture of, a strong culture within NUS where what is need to be done is understood at different levels, and that is implemented, followed through, and outcomes are looked at and reevaluated and revisited and we keep doing this perpetually. So this is probably the cultural way of doing it. And of course, we are not born with this culture. We emulated this culture from the other best practices around the world. I could name all those institutions, but essentially, we have our own culture, but that's more history from the point of social aspects. But we are talking about a culture of how you perform, how you do things, how you run a university, how you go about training future graduates, and how do you relate to the industry transformation. Here, I think there's a lot one could emulate from other institutions who are ahead, are a little bit more experienced, and we can learn from their progress as well as mistakes. So we do make mistakes. I actually want to say that it's not that NUS do not make mistakes. We make lots of mistakes. The only thing is we act faster, we move faster, and we respond to and take care of the downside of things so that we can still continue to progress. So in a nutshell, it's about the culture of excellence and wanting to do that in the best way possible.
Thank you.
I just want to build on that notion of speed. And part of it, of course, is being fast in response, but part of what C. Ram just described is being able to look forward, to be able to develop models of what is going to change, the bellwethers of what's going to change. And I want to connect that to what Her Excellency, the Deputy Minister, was sharing before about the imperative to make sure that students get jobs. And that's particularly hard in a format of higher education where someone's going to be years in education and it can come out in a different job market at the other end. And so this goes back to the notion of a both and, that we often hear, hey, education is about the timeless skills, not the timely skills, that's vocational. And I think, you know, as Joe expressed before, it's a false choice. We need to be able to bring the two together, and this is where data really come to bear. And I think, you know, I'll give a few illustrations of how universities have been using this big data approach that we bring to bear to be able to achieve that both end. One good example, Phil, this is in our hometown in Boston, is with Northeastern University, which has been very aggressive at trying to develop programs that look ahead to whether it be emerging technology like data analytics and cybersecurity, but also to being able to understand how jobs are changing and to address those needs. Northeastern would not need a lot of big data in order to know that in Boston there are a lot of biotech companies and they hire a lot of life science people. But when you dig in a little bit further, one of the things that it turns out, there's not a huge number of these jobs, but they're really hard to fill, and they're for what I'll call regulatory project managers. Imagine what it takes to shepherd a compound from discovery through trials and ultimately to approval. So good project management skills, enough life science knowledge to be able to communicate with people throughout the process, and the regulatory knowledge to be able to get the compound approved. That's a hybrid job, by the way. We were talking about that before. Northeastern looked at this and they saw what specifically is required for those jobs, who needs them. They created a program, and it was something that became a tremendous success, not only in enrolling lots of students, but in placing students into jobs. They've done that now 35 times, increased the size of their professional studies program by tenfold in the space of about 5 years by taking that kind of approach. I think another way in which universities use these data is to engage their faculty. And it's interesting because very often we try to affect change around faculty. We assume that faculty is the problem, that's the resistance. And of course, faculty want, as many of us are faculty, want our students to do well. And you know, the University of South Florida just did a very impressive thing of saying, look, their rector, their provost, went to, I think, something like 74 departments and said, we're not going to tell you what to teach, but we want you to know what employers expect of your graduates. And what they found was that they, in fact, I was just moderating a panel the day before yesterday in which somebody from USF was talking about how they felt like Jane Goodall in the faculty discussions, all of a sudden the faculty would start having these heated discussions about what they could achieve. So this notion of being able to use data to really see how programs are changing and whether they're aligned is something that can be very powerful and increasingly is affecting very positive change in universities around the world.
Thanks. Srivan?
Can I just add to what my colleague has said? Best way to understand Singaporean mind, we are primarily a trading nation. That means we have a trading mindset. So what that means is most people in Singapore would consider their hinterland is not Singapore, the rest of the world. So think about it. When you see your hinterland is not Saudi Arabia, your hinterland is the rest of the world, the way you look at things would be very different. And second part is, I think since Phil knows how to put me on the spot, so I just keep thinking on my legs here, I would probably put it, Singaporeans, our professors in the universities and students, we probably have a mind 4.0 in a world of 3.0. Because if you look at the world, you could probably say in a stages of every 1,000 years. We are in a time period, you could say world 3.0. I could describe that in detail when we have more time. But it's more important to have mind 4.0 so that you know how to navigate a world 3.0, which is quite different from the world 2.0. So with that, I'd like to pass on.
Thank you very much. Actually, what you've just explained about how the university created a culture of understanding the changes in each profession and each specialty and making sure that you are coping with these changes. Looking at the Saudi labor market and the changes happening, and I'm sure like most of the people sitting here are academics and they teach a lot of subjects. I think like if I ask a question, and I was academic, I still consider myself an academic, by the way. Yeah, it's something that you can't take off. I mean, the one thing that we think about as academic is research and students. This is the major, the major thing we do in our lives as academics is think about our research and think about how our students are performing. Now, a lot of universities in Saudi Arabia are working so hard to accomplish on Shanghai scoring and on research publications and making sure that we reach the best journals in the world. That's fair, that's great, that's amazing. But at the same time, let's make sure that we do the research required to make sure that our student, that is one of our major goals in our profession, is going to have a job when they graduate. So let's have part of our research focused on the skills required in the profession I teach. So coming from a radiology background, it was really important for me that the students do keep up with the changes in the profession, the changes in the industry. Having that part of my research could really make a lot for our universities and serve our labor market.
Can I press you a little bit on this point? Do you think that in the next 20 years, 10 years, in this country, given Vision 2030, that the graduates who are coming out of Saudi universities, as you see them today, will be suited for the labor market that's emerging in the country? Because, as you know better than I, the plan is for dramatic changes in the base economy here, which will require dramatic skills. And do you think the universities, A, are thinking about the changes needed, B, can be successful in making them?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, today when I just arrived, I visited one of the universities and they told me, the person who introduced me, the colleagues in the booth said, I mean, these are the heads of the Vision 2030 office in the university. And I thought that was amazing. Having a VRO or a vision realization office in a university is really gonna bridge the requirements between the labor market and higher education. I think if universities do not move this way towards understanding what are the challenges coming, what are the opportunities coming, what are the changes coming in economy and investment and finance, I mean, spending financially, the budget is completely changing, and I'm sure universities understand now where is the spending going to go, where is the government going to spend the money, on what projects, on what type of investments. If universities do not realize that now, and I know a lot of universities is realizing this and working on it, if universities do not realize, they will have difficulties finding jobs for their graduates. Now, we should think one of the recommendations of the G20 meetings this year, last year, 2018, in September, in the working group, employment working group, the recommendations was that we need to have a continuous education even for adults, even for graduates. Universities should be capable of having this continuous education. This is number one. Number two, what type of professions? Do we need very high elite, sophisticated professions? Do we need very high skilled? We need low skilled. How much do we need of the middle skilled? And this is what most of the universities are concentrating on now. We should understand what level of middle skills we require, and what type. If we don't do that now, I tell you, universities will have real trouble finding jobs for their graduates.
Okay, thank you. If I can spend just 1 minute giving a little counterexample, and then we'll open the floor for questions. I have had the pleasure in the last 25 years teaching at a very, very conservative, traditional university, Boston College, which has a strong values orientation in a particular tradition, which has thought through several planning changes what they would like to do in the future, and they have generally come out with the view that they would like to do in the future what they have done in the past, but a little bit better. And that's what they're doing. And they have been very, very successful in doing this, and their view, and I happen to agree, is that their future is very bright in this traditional way of understanding what is education, what is understanding building critical skills, and so on. So they're not about to make any big changes. And they feel in their particular niche in this complicated higher education marketplace that all of our countries have, and which the United States has a particularly complicated one because it's so big, that they have a successful future doing what they've been doing, but better. So you can agree or not agree, but that...
So if I could, in the perhaps not agree category, and notwithstanding that Boston College is an excellent institution and a storied institution, and that certainly helps its graduates make sure that they land successfully even if they don't have all the right skills. But as a blueprint, I think it's important to realize something which I know is felt as much here in the kingdom as it's certainly felt in the United States and throughout the world, that a unacceptably high percentage of students graduate into either unemployment or underemployment. We define underemployment as people taking a job that is not a college-level job, not a university-level job. In the United States, we've studied this question extensively. That's more than 4 in 10 graduates wind up in a job that does not require a university degree, and I know that's a problem the world around. And part of the problem is this kind of this last mile. Again, because we hear so often that we're not training people for their first job, we're training them for their 20th job. And it's a comfortable meme and is a logical meme. By the way, we've done a lot of analysis of the core skills of, the core foundational skills of traditional university program, in fact, are overweighted. If you look at, as people move further and further north in their careers, those skills become more and more important. So it's actually true that you are training some of it. But we also know that people who don't get a good first job have a very low likelihood of getting a good 20th job. So the notion that we can afford to create a system that is a comfortable system is a problem in two ways. It's a bottom-up problem and it's a top-down problem. From a bottom-up perspective, we have students who are graduating and who are failing to meet their potential, both immediately and on an ongoing basis. From a top-down perspective, when we start with something as bold as Vision 2030, we say that we're going to rewrite an economy. An economic strategy needs a talent strategy, and a talent strategy needs an education strategy. And to do that means saying that we have to step beyond the comfort zone of what a traditional university is about and say, how do we create the talent pool that Saudi Arabia is going to need to achieve Vision 2030?
Okay.
Briefly.
Yeah, brief one. I want to agree with you, but for a different reason. I'm not sure what is happening in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but in Singapore, we are beginning to see 1 in 5 students are mentally challenged, not disabled, mentally challenged. And that's because in the modern day and age, the families have become smaller. They have lots of friends on Twitter and WeChat and Facebooks and WhatsApp, but the close friends and trusted friends are limited. So there is a gap that's building up in the mindsets of a young generation while they are all absorbing digital technologies. So if you want, for example, UK, they have a minister for loneliness. You know, that's, I'm not sure whether you have such a minister here. UK has officially a minister for loneliness that actually underscores in a 21st century, something else is happening in the society. So I agree with you for a different reason is your colleague said, we will continue to do what we do in a better way. So in this case, one is skills training. Second part, the university professors, it's not about just giving the skills. They would have to figure out to be a mentors and a way of inspirers, so they inspire them to pursue what they like to do. So this is a difficult job, but I think if you look at historically, many universities, professors have done that for a different reason, but I think that need to come back again in this new paradigm. So I agree with you for a different reason, but net result is I agree with you.
Thank you. Okay, let's open the floor for questions and comments. We'll take one at a time, and I would ask you very strongly to briefly ask a question, no speech, and I would ask our distinguished panelists to briefly respond.
Georgiana Mihut, I'm a higher education scholar and I research the relation between higher education and the labor market. My question is, in the United States, more than 50% of college-educated workers say they do not find meaning in their work. 80% affirm that finding purpose in their work is very important to them. At the same time, jobs with high social impact, teachers, social workers, NGO workers, are systematically less paid. How should employers and the labor market change to become more human-centric and more public good-centric? Thank you.
Minister, you want to go?
Minister.
Or? Sure. So, thank you. That's a very important point, and it resonates with what I just said. There is other compounding reason why in the universities, especially research-intensive universities, professors, staff, extremely stressed because they have to meet certain performance requirements. So there's less and less time, quality time available per student. And maybe we get back to our excellency doctoral experience. I don't know if you guys go to the hospitals in Singapore or elsewhere, each time you see a doctor, he is maximum giving you 3 minutes to diagnose you. Maybe 5 minutes if you're lucky, or if you smile enough, he will see you for 5 minutes. You walk into the doctor and he's only giving you 5 minutes. Sometimes I wonder, does he actually listen to me? What is my pain? What is my problem? Or I just want to give the medication. So you could see the kind of stress levels in a high-performing scenarios for a variety of reasons. So your question is, the high impactful people like social workers, as well as the university professors, how should they respond to this? One way is probably the institutional culture. They do value such a way of mentoring, deep mentoring by the professors is valued. So if the institutional leadership, which starts with the rectors and presidents, as well as deans, as well as the heads of the departments, plus your own colleagues, if they see you mentoring and then inspiring people and then addressing their such challenging issues, extremely important. As a professor, I find it is more satisfying because at the end of it, you change somebody's life. So I think you brought a very good point, and this is something we all have to pay attention.
Sorry.
So if you allow me, I mean, every regulator of our labor market and every university wants the graduate to have the first job to be the job that they were trained for, and to have a high rate of satisfaction. That's the ultimate goal that all countries wants to happen. But remember, there are a lot of challenges that are coming up. One of them is the skilling and reskilling. This is one issue. The other thing is the economic turbulence that is happening around the world. Now, definitely countries are going up and down, and labor market is definitely affected. So sometimes if you do the measurements, if you do a survey and you ask people if you're satisfied, you will get answered. They're not satisfied because of is it because of reskilling or skilling requirements of higher education, or is it because the economic situation at that time period is really having a pressure on a lot of jobs are not available anymore, and a lot of people have to take jobs that they are overqualified for. So we always have to think about it in both ways. So therefore, it's not always the first job is the dream job, but we hope we can reach that one day.
Okay. Again, briefly, please.
So just going to the point that was raised about how I like the framing a lot of how we can make work more human and make sure that those are valued. First of all, some encouraging news. We know that human skills are very highly in demand in the job market. Fully 1 in 3 skills that employers articulate are human skills. Most encouragingly in that regard, by the way, that the most data-driven jobs, the most tech-enabled jobs have the highest demand for human skills by a lot. In fact, those jobs that are most tech-enabled and most data-driven have a 50% greater demand for creativity and collaboration skills, for example, than do traditional forms of work. So I think there's some encouraging news there, but and in particular, we're starting to see that spread in the technical spectrum. But I think this is really a question of vocabulary. One of the problems that we have in negotiating the labor market, and particularly negotiating between education and the labor market, is that we tend to speak different vocabularies in different parts of the market. So higher education is speaking a language of learning outcomes and the like, and the labor market's asking for a very technical vocabulary in a lot of cases. And the reality is that if we can create that Rosetta Stone, so we can put them in the same language, we can actually articulate that the student who took courses in the humanities, or the person who worked at an NGO was acquiring skills that are actually high value in other parts of the economy.
Thank you. I really want to encourage you to be brief, us and you.
This is related to the labor market, and my question is for Tamader. Saudi Arabia is a country with mostly economy related to the oil industry. So Brazil is a country in commodities as well. So as you probably look for a transition to different, more diversified economy, this issue of the labor market, are you looking for something like the US, or the market forces determine what is going to be the next demanded and so on allocation of resources in higher education? Or you think more like Canada, where they have targets for teachers, for doctors, and they try to make the system develop those education in the areas that they see more demand? So what is more market-oriented, or something that the public good and the system is more organized from top down, or from, okay?
Yeah, to be honest, it's hard to have a straightforward answer for that question, but I tell you, the leading source for the changes that are happening is the Vision 2030. So it's really easy for any university to just look at what's happening under the Vision 2030, the 13 programs of the Vision 2030, and where are these programs leading. And then based on each program, there are KPIs, there are goals, there are objectives that has to be reached. And universities have to work towards reaching these KPIs and objectives. When it comes to labor market, our role as ministry, we are trying to organize the labor market to make sure that we realize the vision. So we do have a target, that is Vision 2030, and both sides, either education or labor market, both of us are working towards reaching that vision. So it is not only labor market driven and policies, it is not only education driven policies, it is both sectors trying to realize the vision.
Thank you. Anybody in the back there?
Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Abdullah Nafisa from Saudi Electronic University. My question is about the willing of the students to study, actually. I think it's the most important than training students about their skills or future skills. Because now some universities and some government centers, they educate people and students, but they when get the work, they didn't continue. Because the tendency, or they didn't have the willing to do the work. And I think this is the problem, because in Saudi Arabia this happened always, actually. Most of them just looking for any work, and then they train them for a particular skill. When they get the work, they didn't continue. And this is actually wasting of money, just continuous wasting of money. Thank you.
I think that was a comment, not a question. Yes, sir.
Thank you for this added value presentations. Dr. Faisal, General Director of Leadership and Talent Development Center. My question to the panelists, Peter Drucker said in his book, The Challenge of the 21st Century, that we need smart workers. Smart workers mean lifelong learners, learn fast, and they adapt to any changes. So those organizations which they are in higher education, they have to focus back in their product. If their product is not really talented and they are not in a good quality, they have to go back to the processes. They have to discuss how they have talented graduate to the labor market. So I would like to know your opinion about the smart workers. Are really those organizations graduating talented people to the labor market? They can work in any way. So thank you.
I think I'll take it first and let you all continue. when a higher education institution, whether it's someone like us or a university, has to prove that they're producing smart workers, they're producing adaptable, excited for change, not scared of employees. I think it gets back to actually a conversation that happened in one of the previous panels about that continuum between accountability and autonomy. And what it comes down to is universities need, and higher education institutions such as ourselves, need to constantly prove to our students, to our customers, that we are producing that, right? And so that comes from outcomes reports. We do ours with a third-party auditor to ensure quality and ensure there's no funny business going on. I've seen other universities start to do these outcomes reports, not only for your first job, but what does our alumni pool look like in 10 years, right? Because the first job is something that proves you've acquired the skills, the hard skills. You know this programming language or that skill or whatever. But what you said is to make smart workers who adapt to change, you need to also have an outcomes report about your alumni pool 10 years out, 20 years out, 30 years out. And I think the only way you could ever do that is to continue to bring accountability to education in the form of outcomes reports, and what that does, it brings more information to the purchaser, to the student or the government if they're the one paying. And I think that's the only way you get there.
Well, like you, I also follow the
Brief.
Peter Drucker's books, and he has a significant impact on the management thinking. Thank you for bringing that up. So if we deconstruct what is smartness, it's basically about having a confidence and have the ability to adapt. And as my colleague said, the adaptability is one that can be measured through the outcomes. But in terms of the confidence, is about a person having a passion for what they do, and perhaps that could be put as that's the meaning of their existence in life. So the more they align with this as their meaning and passion, I think they're more likely to develop the adaptability. Then they build on the skill sets they need. Even example, if someone is very good in programming, maybe the next year it is not needed because the app is already available. You just download the app and build on it. So this is going to happen because of the technology cycles. So one who could focus here is how do you build that confidence, give the passion, and a sense of adaptability. And I just take that last point about the previous comment. I think one way to handle that is you are not actually training graduates for job seekers. You actually have to give them the mindset. They're going to create jobs in Saudi Arabia. Try it out. Maybe it might help you.
Thank you. We have time for two more quick questions. Okay.
Thank you very much, Phil, and the distinguished panelists. My name is Walid Al-Somali from the Saudi Arabian National Oil Company, Saudi Aramco. Brief comment because of the time. I think the way that we view from industry the skills gap is extremely very serious, and as Her Excellency Dr. Tamadr mentioned, the fourth industrial revolution and its all derivatives present an immediate pressure on us in industry and academia to work jointly together to address these challenges coming up from this transformational and exponential digital growth. If I may suggest, one of the enablers to address the skills gap is a better, sustainable, and structured public-private partnerships. Institutionalized way of having a sustainable relationship between industry and academia. I can recall just one organization in the US which seems to be extremely very successful, the Council on Competitiveness in Washington, that brings all Fortune 500 CEOs and top Ivy League universities presidents and national labs directors to sit around one table to discuss things like skills alignment, research and development, technology development, innovation, and what a dialogue and a conversation can take place. So something at at the national level might be extremely very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry? Sure.
Thank you for bringing this up. Actually, there have been a lot of workshops talking to universities and sitting down with universities and trying to close the gap between the way universities and labor market is thinking and trying to close the gap regarding the skills and reskilling. I think universities should have, as I mentioned before, should have an eye on what is the national economic and investment changes, and also the development plans. There's a lot of social development, financial development, economic development going on. Now, universities should focus. I think it's hard to look at everything at one time, but you should focus on like one of universities could say, I want to focus on social development and make sure I have graduates that can come up to the standards that the Vision 2030 requires for our workers to look like. What skills is required to drive these strategic goals. It's really important the drive to come from within the university, to be wanting to cope with the expectations. If this doesn't happen, because as I told you, there was a lot of workshops that happened, and I don't think we've really closed that gap, because we need an internal motive within the university to have it part of its structure, to have this vision realization office and this person who is in charge of making sure that graduates from these universities are able to find jobs next day they graduate.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're out of time, and I'd like to thank our panelists for a really good, very interactive, highly informative session. So thank you very much.